Welcome into Palmetto Sports Daily on this Monday. I'm Kevin Bilodeau in Charleston, going just one-on-one today with Teagan Brown in Myrtle Beach. Now, later on this afternoon, the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame inducting their class of 2026. It is a class headlined by former South Carolina head football coach Steve Spurrier, of course, a guy who helped put the Gamecocks on the map, maybe led them to their most successful time period in the program's history, as they had multiple finishes within the top five in the final AP polls of the season. He's the all-time leader in wins at South Carolina history. Just put together 3 straight 11-win seasons from 2011 through 2013, led the Gamecocks to 5 bowl wins as victory, produced their only 3 top 10 finishes in school history, including top 4 in 2013. So no doubt Steve Spurrier belongs in this Hall of Fame. He had a chance to speak earlier this afternoon.
I didn't really know about all the Hall of Fames up here. I'm in one in Greenville. They have, I guess, a football Hall of Fame. But I like this one. It's people involved in sports, men, women, and not just football, you know. So I think it's more involved with people that really do good for their community. And, yeah, I'm proud to be in the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame.
So Spurrier, no doubt the headliner for this event tonight. Other nominees also going in include Tim Beret, the former Clemson's SID, Sports Information Director, a guy who was with Clemson for more than 40 years. He became legendary in the business for being one of the best SIDs in the entire country. Definitely deserves his spot here as well. Tim Beret speaking this afternoon as well.
It's just a great honor to be inducted into the South Carolina Hall of Fame. It means as much to me because of my boss Bob Bradley and Tom Price. I think are the only other sports information directors in the Hall of Fame. So it is I learned so much from them. I forget my first year in 1979. I went to a Clemson South Carolina baseball game and sat between them. And I wish I had had a recorder and just heard all the stories that they told. But I've had a great career here, and I'm very honored to be inducted.
Yeah, it's a great class this year. Also in this class, Amber Campbell-Moore, the former hammer thrower from Coastal Carolina, who competed in multiple world championships as well as 3 Olympics in 2008, 2012, and 2016. She was actually at Coastal Carolina back when they were in the Big South, graduating back in 2003. I had the chance to catch up with her about what the honor means and still seeing the support from Coastal Carolina.
Means everything, and especially because there's been so many administration changes and things like that. To know that I'm still supported by my collegiate community is incredible, and I'm so thankful. And I love being able to go back. I was just able to go back for homecoming this year, and so to be able to make those connections again, it's fantastic.
She's also done some coaching at Coastal Carolina for the track team, and she's had the chance to come back. She's in a couple of other Hall of Fames as well, including the one in New Mexico. But yeah, I mean, a great class this year, Kevin. It's been really cool to hear from each of them as they talk about their journeys and how it really cultivates into this moment.
Yeah, and I wanted to go through the rest of the class as well, because there are a bunch more people going in this afternoon. Andrew Province, the former South Carolina NFL defensive lineman, a former Clemson pitcher, major leaguer Brian Barnes, Tim Beret we mentioned, Greenwood native and Appalachian State quarterback Armani Edwards, Anderson native and Georgia basketball standout Saudia Roundtree, and longtime South Carolina high school cross country and track coaching legend Bob Jenkins, who's being enshrined posthumously. Teagan, I know you probably didn't get to see much of Armani Edwards. I got to see him play the Citadel a couple times. Just literally one of the scariest players I've ever seen a local team go up against. One of those dual threat quarterbacks. He could do it with his legs and his arm, but just so scared because he would roll out either way. And if a guy had a step, you knew he was going to hit him. And if he didn't, you knew he was going to go through about 6 linebackers and find his way to pick up a first down at the very least. So just a terrifying guy that I saw the Citadel go up against a few times during his time at App State. He would go on in the NFL. I believe he was a 3rd-round pick of the Panthers after he left App State. Had a couple of years in the NFL. I believe he had a year with the Browns as well. Then would go on to the CFL, won a Grey Cup there as well. So really fantastic career for him also.
Yeah, I know that the Coastal Carolina fan base, of course, has their thoughts about App State, but it is so great to see such a talented athlete go into the Hall of Fame, see this whole class, and what they've been able to accomplish. I know for me, since I've only been here the past 3 years covering the modern era of athletics in the state, it's been really cool to kind of do my research on these guys and girls and just see what they were able to accomplish and take a little bit of inspiration from it as I talk about them on air and on the show with you.
And that event tonight is sold out, but we're going to have much more on it coming up tomorrow right here on Palmetto Sports Daily. And we are just getting started for today. We've got more coming up right after this.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We are getting into the postseason for college baseball as the conference tournaments get ready to begin. Now, Coastal Carolina did not finish the season the way really any of us thought that they would after maintaining that top spot in the conference standings for literally 29 out of 30 conference games. It was the very last game that all of a sudden they fall to second place, and that was because over the weekend they dropped the first game against Louisiana. They won the second. It was 1-1. All they needed to do was win on Sunday. But as I've talked about on this show before, Coastal Carolina has issues finishing things on Sunday. They have not found the correct closer still when it comes to playing on the mound. So as for Coastal Carolina and what they're doing next, they have the number 2 seed in the Sun Belt tournament, and I'm going to read this description of what exactly could happen because some things are up in the air for them. They're going to face the highest seeded first round winner following the single elimination games between number 7 Louisiana and number 10 Marshall, plus number 8 Old Dominion and number 9 Georgia State. So they will face the highest seeded winner of those games, whereas Southern Miss, who ended up winning the Sun Belt because they gained that top spot from playing the worst team in the Sun Belt over the weekend, they will face the lowest seeded winner in their first game of the Sun Belt tournament. So the Chanticleers will play on Wednesday no matter who they end up playing, but those games will kind of have to play out in order to learn that answer. But Kevin, I mean, just a brutal way for Coastal to really finish out this season after having that top spot.
Yeah, I mean, finishing in second place, it's not a huge deal for them because, like you said, you're talking about just playing the better of the bad teams that win on this first day of the tournament as opposed to playing the worst team. So that's not a huge difference. You're not talking about any kind of home field advantage in the tournament up for grabs. So that's not a big deal. But I think the fact that they did struggle down the stretch, that's something that might get into their psyche a little bit. And you mentioned they're struggling in the last games. I mean, I'm looking at of their 9 losses, Teagan. You might not know this off the top of your head, but how many of those 9 losses in conference this year do you think came in Sunday games or in the last games of a series? Because it felt like the majority of them did, if not all of them.
Yeah, it was most of them. I want to say, nobody quote me on this, but it's at least 4 of them because they had that stretch. It might even be 5 because they had the stretch where 3 or 4 weekends in a row, they lost all of those Sunday matchups. And it was a problem that I kept bringing up. Of course, it was before Cam Flukie came back, but then Flukie ends up coming back. That game where he starts on Sunday is yet again another Sunday that they lost. So, I mean, they just still have not been able to address that problem, Kevin.
Yeah, and I think that's something that could come back and haunt them. Maybe not in this Sun Belt tournament, but maybe, once you get to the NCAAs, we're still assuming that they're going to make it, even if they struggle this week. But, they'll have their top guys go on that first day, but it's once you get to those Sunday games in the tournament of regionals or even a super regional, that's where your bullpen starts getting really thin, your lineup starts getting thin. That's where you need to start having guys who come off the bench, come up with big hits. And I don't know if Coastal has that this year. And the other thing with Coastal that we've seen lately is, we've been talking all season, ever since Paul Maneri left South Carolina, about Kevin Schnall and the possibility of him leaving Coastal to go to Columbia and be the head coach at South Carolina. This weekend, it seemed like it kind of hit a little bit of a fever pitch, and people really expecting that move to maybe not be made too soon, but something that's on the horizon, especially once South Carolina dips out of the SEC tournament this week.
Yeah, there have been a lot of posts about that on Twitter over the weekend and at the beginning of last week. Just, lots of people hearing from sources, so they say, that, the deal with Schnall was closed and all this stuff and just waiting until the end of the season. Of course, none of this is confirmed. And we've asked Schnall before about the South Carolina jobs and the rumors with it. And I will say all of the answers that he ever gave us were never directly, no, I'm not taking the job. He just talked about being focused on the team right now. And then even one of the times that he answered, he was saying Coastal doesn't have all the resources that he needs, but Chance Miller and the president, James Weinbrake, they were working with Schnall to, create possibilities, but it also seemed like a very backhanded, like, Coastal, if you have the resources, like, I'll stay. So it was a very interesting answer that he gave probably about a month ago when the rumors really started circulating.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that he would leave at this point, during the conference tournaments, even once they get to the NCAA tournaments. I wouldn't think that a guy who's this focused on his team is talking to anyone else right now. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't have people that are talking to South Carolina. Maybe his agent has already reached out, or the school has reached out to his agent and they're talking and, they're going behind the scenes, and maybe the agent maybe not has a deal, but maybe they have the framework or something he's going to want to bring Kevin once that season is over. But I'm pretty certain that he wouldn't be talking to another team during the middle of the year.
No, I don't think so. And I mean, if you think back to last season, the Tennessee job that was open that he interviewed for, it was confirmed that he did take that interview and talk to them. He, of course, didn't end up taking the job, but, he did the interview at a time when he didn't have to, think about being in season, focusing on this team. But, covering him the past few years and seeing him come into this role, he very much so has been the type of coach with laser focus on the team, in the moment, put in the work. So even if something does come to fruition with South Carolina or another team, that'll happen in the offseason. I really do not see it happening at any point, especially as they're getting ready for the conference tournament, and they really need to lock in. So I'm also hoping that these rumors, aren't affecting the team mindset. And I hope that Schnall is at least talking to them and telling them, we're in the right now. Like, I'm focused on you guys and I need you to kick butt in this tournament because we have to advance further into the postseason because they've already, shot themselves in the foot a little bit when it came to the end of the year. They lost the chance to host a regional at one point in time. There was talk about hosting a super regional. Clearly, neither of those things are going to happen. So you just hope that the focus is on the team right now, Kevin.
Yeah, and Coastal, like you said, they kick off the Sun Belt tournament on Wednesday. We don't know against who yet. We know the two big schools in the state, they kick off their conference tournaments coming up on Tuesday afternoon. For Clemson, it's going to be the ACC tournament with a 5 o'clock start, around 5 o'clock, we should say, as they go up against Notre Dame. South Carolina, they go at 5:30 when they'll take on Tennessee. Both teams just been blah for certainly the last month or so. Clemson just been ugly the last few weeks, especially. It just seems like, especially after that Coastal win, when you thought, hey, maybe they've started to turn the corner and maybe things are going to turn around now just in time. They go on this big run, and then they've just been seemingly blown out of the building the last couple of weeks ever since that game. They did win their series finale against Virginia Tech on Saturday after losing the first two of that series, though, and that also last week included a loss to USC Upstate, so that's been ugly for the Tigers. South Carolina, it's just been ugly nonstop. They've got 23 losses in SEC play, which just is unheard of for the Gamecocks, but that's where they are as they start things against Tennessee coming up tomorrow afternoon. Now, as for the low country teams, their all-conference tournament's going to start on Wednesday. All of them starting early as well, starting off with the Citadel in the Southern Conference tournament over in the Upstate. They're going to kick things off at 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning when they take on VMI. That's a VMI team that they played just this past weekend to round out the regular season. The Bulldogs were on the road against the Keydets and got the sweep there. So good signs for the Citadel as far as them looking to advance. As for Charleston Southern, they had a rough weekend at home as they wrapped up the regular season against Radford. They dropped the first two, did come back and get the win in the regular season finale on Saturday. The good news for that is they face Radford once again in the Big South tournament. That one kicks off at noon on Wednesday as well. And then for the College of Charleston, they kick off at noon on Wednesday as well. They wrapped up the regular season at home against William and Mary, came up with a sweep of the Tribe over the course of 3 games. They now have their record over 500 for the year. They're, I believe, 28-26, 18-12 in the CAA. So Things starting to look a little better for the College of Charleston. The tough thing for them, though, they open up their CAA tournament, not only on the road, obviously, but the tournament in UNC Wilmington, and that's who they play in their first game coming up on Wednesday afternoon at noon. They'll take on the host Seahawks. So not ideal for CFC, but UNCW, I believe they took 2 or 3 from them on the road this year. So that could be a good sign for the Cougars as they start to try to turn things around here. And college baseball tournament time is here, too, in barbecue for some of these teams. That's one of my favorite sayings in all of college sports. So really excited for this week, Teagan.
Yeah, it's super exciting week. Great to see so many of our teams hopefully moving on in these conference tournaments, showing off a little bit more than some of them were maybe able to do in the regular season. We're going to take a quick break here on Palmetto Sports Daily, but we'll be back on the diamond on the other side.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We move over to softball, where the NCAA tournament kicking off last weekend. And just like that, all of our in-state teams have been eliminated after the first round of regionals. Start off with the College of Charleston. They made the trip over to Athens. They were taking on Georgia in the opener. Good start for CFC on Friday as they actually took the lead with a big home run against the Bulldogs early on, but Georgia would fight their way back. They came all the way back, got the victory in that first game. So Clemson actually took on, or I should say CFC actually took on Clemson in the losers bracket on Saturday, and coming up short after the Tigers were upset in the first round by UNC Greensboro in a 1-0 loss. But Clemson came back, got the win over the College of Charleston on Saturday, eliminating the Cougars after just 2 games. So maybe the best season in CFC history comes to a quick end. Tough ride for CFC. For it to end like that, but still, like I said, maybe if not the best season they've had in program history, definitely one of them. A young head coach, the youngest head coach in all of Division I, so they got a lot to build on. This national recognition is going to be a big thing for them to bring in some recruits over the course of the next year or two. So congratulations to CFC on a great season. Now, as for Clemson, we mentioned that they got off to a rough start in that Athens regional as well. A 1-0 loss to UNC Greensboro. They come back, beat the College of Charleston to move on. They would beat UNCG, and then they get a shot at Georgia, and it just did not come through as the Bulldogs moving on out of that Athens regional. Here's what the Tigers had to say after the loss.
Postseason softball, I've said it all along, you got to have good pitching, which we had today. You got to play good defense, which we didn't do today in the first inning. And then you got to have timely hitting. So when you don't do 2 or 3 of those, you're probably going to lose this time of year. And that's what happened today. But we still have life. You know, we have a saying, you know, 1 pitch, 1 life. And what doesn't kill you is only going to make you stronger. We're a young team. I have complete confidence that tomorrow we're going to come out and fight and play a lot better than we did today.
Except there is no tomorrow for Clemson because their season is over after losing that game to Georgia. So they are going back home and looking forward to the 2027 season. Now, as for South Carolina, they had the farthest trip of maybe anyone in the tournament for the regional opener, as they had to go all the way to Los Angeles, play in the UCLA bracket. The UCLA team that, of course, upset them in Columbia in a super regional last year for a trip to the College World Series. And this one wasn't nearly as close as that game last year. South Carolina would end up falling in that regional final to UCLA 15-1. So that's how their season comes to an end, Teagan. And just not the, you know, despite a good regular season for these teams, not the showing we were hoping for in those regionals.
Yeah, absolutely brutal ending, especially for South Carolina. I know when they came to Coastal this year, they pretty much pulled an Uno reverse with that absolutely crushing Coastal Carolina with a very similar score. But, you know, it's postseason softball, a lot of unpredictables. Still really great to see so many in-state programs just advancing to that point, you know, putting up the competition that some of them did. So, yeah, and they all made it further than Coastal Carolina, who only made it a couple of games into the Sun Belt tournament. So, you know, end of softball season, but we move on to the next one. And I know that Coastal Carolina is already looking at recruiting and grabbing who they can once people enter the portal, because they made a whole post on Twitter about it yesterday. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We wrap up today with hockey as we wrap up the hockey season in the state of South Carolina after the South Carolina Stingrays falling short in Game 5 of their best-of-7 series with the Everblades last night, losing that one by the score of 3-1. That puts the Rays out of the playoffs after losing the series 4-1 to the Everblades. In Florida, we had mentioned this before. They had, I believe, the second most points in the ECHL this year, so this was going to be a tough road for the Stingrays to climb. They showed some fight getting that win on Friday and extending this series to a fifth game that they played yesterday evening over at the North Charleston Coliseum. And this one closed throughout the entire night. It was scoreless after 2 periods, but you could tell Florida, they were out shooting the Rays by, I believe, more than 20. I believe it was something like 32-11 at one point early on in the third period. And in the end, it was just too much for the Rays to overcome as they end up falling in this one by the score of 3-1. Afterwards, the Rays talk about their season coming to an end.
That was awesome. I mean, gave us a chance to win. Yeah, I don't know. We had spurts of it, but just not enough continued offense, continued pressure in their zone. And, we battled to the end, right? That's what you can ask for out of these guys. And, give Florida credit, they're a good team.
It sucks. Probably the best group of guys I've ever played with, honestly. It was a brotherhood. Away from the ring, we were really tight. And, to come up short like this, it's going to sting for a few days for sure.
So a disappointing end, and now the Rays get ready for their 34th season over at the North Charleston Coliseum, which will be the 26-27 season. But like we said, Florida, one of the best teams in the league this entire year. So not a surprise that they come up short, Teagan, but just disappointing as it is for any season that doesn't end with a championship.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I know that there are a lot of hockey fans in South Carolina that really do become invested in their teams. We saw it out here in Florence with the PD Ice Cats this year, but definitely a brutal ending for them, Kevin.
Yep, and so now the Rays just start to build their program for next year, and we start to build this program for tomorrow. We will see you back here on Tuesday for the next Palmetto Sports Daily. Have a great night.